A powerful black woman CEO asked a simple question at a gallery opening: why was I overlooked? What followed exposed more than bias. It revealed how silent moments can illuminate the deepest truths about who we truly see. Vanessa Reynolds had been preparing for weeks, her calendar meticulously organized down to the hour. She was used to evenings like this. In fact, she thrived on them. High-profile art events meant valuable connections and potential investors for her tech company's ambitious new sustainability initiative. Tonight wasn't just another networking opportunity. It was the exclusive preview of the Blackwell Gallery's winter exhibition in Chicago that could secure crucial backing for her company's expansion into renewable energy solutions. By 7:30 p.m., she was moving through the gallery's main hall, dressed in a tailored ivory pantsuit with subtle gold accessories that caught the light as she moved. Her digital portfolio rested on her phone, ready to be shared at the perfect moment. She navigated the space with practiced ease, eyes alert but relaxed, taking in both the artwork and the room's dynamics. The gallery wasn't overcrowded. Art world elites mostly, some in evening wear, some in carefully curated casual attire that cost more than most people's monthly rent. The air held that distinct mix of expensive perfume and the faint scent of fresh paint. Vanessa didn't mind. She was focused, already mapping potential conversations with board members she'd identified from her research. "Good evening," a voice said briefly. A gallery assistant, male, early 30s, with slicked back hair and wire-rimmed glasses, barely made eye contact as he passed by. No offer of a catalog, no warm welcome, just a glance and gone. She didn't react. No need to read too much into it, not yet. Across the room, a man in his 60s glanced up from studying a large abstract canvas. His name was Richard Bennett. No one at that gallery knew he had once served as the chief arts correspondent for the New York Times for over 15 years. He looked like someone's distinguished professor, silver hair neatly trimmed, dressed in a charcoal blazer with elbow patches. He noticed the greeting Vanessa received, or rather the one she didn't. Richard didn't say anything, but his eyes lingered on the way the assistant skipped Vanessa and beamed at the white woman in designer heels who entered just after her. He'd seen enough in his lifetime to recognize quiet patterns, and sometimes those patterns were louder than words. Vanessa continued examining the artwork. Every so often, she'd shift slightly in her stance or glance around. Still no catalog, no welcome, just the low murmur of the crowd and the occasional clink of champagne glasses. 40 minutes later, the gallery director began her formal welcome. It was a polished introduction. Guests gathered closer, balancing drinks and small plates of hors d'oeuvre. Vanessa stood near the back, making mental notes about the featured artists. For a moment, she thought about home. Her son's science competition was next weekend. He'd begged her to attend this time. She'd already told her assistant to clear her schedule that day. She wasn't missing it again. A different gallery assistant walked by, a younger woman this time, and handed exhibition catalogs to guests standing near the entrance. She skipped Vanessa, flat out skipped her. Richard raised his eyebrows slightly but remained silent. The assistant paused beside a woman in an emerald dress. "Would you like to know more about the artist's process?" she asked her, smiling. Vanessa waited. Nothing. She cleared her throat gently. The gallery assistant didn't look back. Eventually, a third staff member came by offering champagne. This one stopped short at Vanessa's position before abruptly moving to the next group. Vanessa watched, then slowly turned to look at a nearby sculpture. Her expression didn't change, her posture didn't shift, but inside, something settled. Not shock, just recognition. Richard watched all of it. His eyes tracked each exchange, each moment skipped. He slowly reached for his phone and lowered it discreetly into his palm, camera facing outward. But something was about to happen that would shift the weight of this quiet evening onto an entire city's conscience. By the time the gallery director announced the special tour of the restricted exhibition area, Vanessa already knew how the rest of the evening would go. She'd seen it before, not this exact situation, but the rhythm of being quietly brushed aside in spaces where people didn't expect to see someone like her. She wasn't dramatic, she wasn't confrontational, she had too much to lose for that. But she also wasn't naive. She kept her face neutral as the exclusive tours began to form. The familiar sound of hushed excitement and shuffling feet echoed through the hall. Conversations quieted as people eagerly gathered for the highlight of the evening. Vanessa glanced across the room. Richard had tucked his phone partially out of view and now watched the staff like he was analyzing a complex painting, calm, focused. Nothing obvious, just taking mental notes. The head curator, the same man from earlier, began organizing the tour group's first cluster, second cluster, then the third group forming near the west wall. He smiled, made small talk. He guided a woman in a designer dress with a "right this way, ma'am," and a practiced smile that seemed reserved for select guests. Then he reached Vanessa's position. He walked past her, without breaking stride. "Would you like to join the exclusive viewing?" he asked the couple standing just beyond Vanessa. She stepped forward slightly, politely. "I'd like to join the tour," she said, her voice steady. The curator glanced at her quickly. "Oh, we're actually at capacity for this group." His tone was flat, no apology, no explanation. He turned his head to the couple again. "But they're joining," Vanessa said, glancing at the couple being welcomed just 2 feet away. He didn't answer, just moved on, guiding the group forward. Vanessa remained where she stood, eyes fixed on a nearby painting. The brushstrokes on the canvas were bold and chaotic. Inside, the silence was much louder. Now the couple, a man and woman in their early 40s, looked over awkwardly. "You can go ahead of us if you'd like," the woman offered. Vanessa shook her head once gently. "Thanks, but don't worry about it." The gallery grew quiet again. Richard's phone was angled down toward his jacket pocket, camera rolling. His hand never moved. He looked at a sculpture like he wasn't watching anything, but his ears caught everything. About 10 minutes passed, then a twist occurred. Another staff member, a young woman with bright blue hair and multiple ear piercings, walked through checking if anyone had been missed. She stopped when she saw Vanessa standing alone. "Did you not get into the tour, ma'am?" she asked, genuinely confused. Vanessa looked up at her. "I was told they were at capacity." The young woman blinked. "Let me check." She turned and walked briskly toward the restricted area. A few moments later, she returned with a special access badge. "We have plenty of room," she said, handing it to Vanessa. "I'm really sorry about that." "Not sure what happened." Vanessa gave a polite nod. "I appreciate it," but she didn't move toward the restricted area. She just stood there, badge in hand. Richard approached slightly and spoke for the first time. "May I ask something?" he said quietly. Vanessa turned to him. "Would this have gone the same way if you looked different?" Vanessa exhaled slowly through her nose, almost a laugh, but not quite. "I asked myself that more times than I can count," she replied. Neither of them said anything else for the next half hour, but the silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of understanding, of calculation, of knowing exactly how thin the line is between being welcomed and being overlooked, and how often that line moves depending on who's watching. A few feet away, someone posted a photo of the exhibition to Instagram. Another guest laughed at a witty comment about modern art. Near the entrance, a woman in an ivory pantsuit stood perfectly still beside an access badge she never asked for and wouldn't use. But the real story hadn't even started yet, and what was quietly captured on Richard's phone was about to make a lot of people very, very uncomfortable. By the time the gallery director announced the closing remarks, the staff had returned to autopilot, smiling, offering final drinks, directing guests toward the exit. No one mentioned what had happened near the west wall. Vanessa hadn't joined the exclusive tour. She had spent the rest of the evening studying the public exhibition, not because she was particularly moved by the art, but because it gave her something to look at that wasn't a wall of forced politeness and invisible lines. Richard Bennett had stopped pretending to admire the sculptures. Instead, he'd watched quietly, carefully. His phone rested in his pocket now, but he'd gotten what he needed, 2 minutes and 43 seconds. That's how long the recording was. Enough to show the moment Vanessa asked why she was overlooked. Enough to catch the way the head curator's tone turned dismissive when answering her. Enough to highlight the expression on Vanessa's face, composed but heavy. He didn't know if he was going to use it. He hadn't decided. But he knew one thing. If he didn't capture it, no one would believe it had happened at all. As the gallery began to empty, guests lingered, exchanging business cards, making dinner plans, commenting on favorite pieces. The energy shifted. People moved on. Vanessa stayed positioned near a large canvas, eyes forward, waiting for the crowd to thin. Her posture was straight, hands relaxed at her sides. She didn't look angry, just done. The main hall emptied gradually. Art enthusiasts reluctantly headed for the exits. Vanessa collected her coat from the check and gave a quick nod to Richard. "Have a good evening," she said. "You too," he replied, then added, "Don't let this slide." Vanessa paused and looked at him. "I won't," she said. Outside the gallery, she moved with purpose, but without hurry. The night air was crisp with early autumn. Streetlights cast long shadows across the sidewalk. She found a quiet spot near a coffee shop still open late and opened her laptop. 20 minutes later, she filed a formal complaint through the gallery's online contact form. It was methodical, not angry, just a clear summary of events. She didn't exaggerate or speculate. She listed the exhibition name, the time, the descriptions of the staff members she encountered, and a direct quote from the curator who'd told her, "We're at capacity." She clicked submit, and that could have been the end of it. But Richard had other plans. He sat on a bench in the small park across from the gallery, sipping from a travel mug, debating his next move. He hadn't posted anything on social media in months, but something about the moment sat heavy on him. He pulled out his phone, trimmed the video, and typed, "I rarely share things like this, but what I witnessed at the Blackwell Gallery tonight left me disturbed." A black woman was deliberately excluded from the exclusive tour. When she asked why, she was told they were at capacity, while others were welcomed right in front of her. "I filmed it. See for yourself." He posted the video. By the time his rideshare reached his apartment in Lincoln Park, the clip had been shared nearly 500 times. 3 hours later, it hit 25,000, and just before midnight, someone from a major arts publication picked it up. They didn't even call him first, just ran the story with a blurred still of Vanessa's face and the headline, "Elite Chicago Gallery allegedly excludes Black Tech CEO from exclusive viewing." That word allegedly sat wrong with him. He had the proof. He'd lived it. Vanessa, meanwhile, was already back at her penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, reviewing quarterly projections that had no connection to the evening's quiet act of exclusion. She kept her focus sharp, her analysis precise. She didn't dwell on the gallery, not yet. But when her personal assistant texted, "You're trending on Twitter," she blinked once, no reaction. Later, in her home office, she watched the clip with the sound off. Her jaw didn't move, but her eyes told a different story. Silence only works until the world hears something it can't ignore. and the world was now watching. By 10:15 a.m. the next day, the story had already spread beyond Twitter. Local news stations in Chicago ran it as a morning segment. Tech executive claims racial bias at prestigious gallery opening, the anchor said, voice smooth, almost indifferent. The clip played in the corner of the screen. They kept Vanessa's name out of it, probably because she hadn't said a word yet. But anyone who recognized her from the tech world knew exactly who she was. Within the hour, her name was trending. Richard sat in his study, surrounded by books and art prints collected over decades of cultural criticism. A colleague from his newspaper days texted, "Did you really film this?" Another wrote, "Why did you get involved?" The one that stuck with him most simply said, "It's about time someone showed the truth." He didn't answer any of them. He just sat with it. His daughter Julia called. "Dad, is this going to become a thing?" Richard didn't look up from his desk. "It already is." Meanwhile, in a glass-walled conference room overlooking the Chicago River, Vanessa sat through a strategy meeting like nothing had happened. She answered questions, evaluated proposals, and nodded when appropriate. But every time she checked her phone, there were more notifications. Some of the tweets were supportive. The dignity in her face speaks volumes. This is what we mean by twice as good to get half as far. Watch how she maintains her composure while being erased. Others weren't so kind. There's always someone filming when they want to play the race card. Maybe they really were at capacity. Not everything is about skin color. Vanessa scrolled, expression neutral. She wasn't surprised, not at the comments, not at the speed, not even at the people now tagging the gallery, demanding answers. Back at the Blackwell Gallery, the board of directors was already in emergency session. The executive director, Sophia Blackwell herself, stood at the head of a long table, holding a tablet in one hand and a pen in the other. "We need a statement immediately," she said. "Do we identify the staff involved?" someone asked. "We're still confirming exactly what happened. Should we reach out to Ms. Reynolds?" Sophia shook her head. "Not until legal advises us. For now, we acknowledge awareness and commit to a thorough investigation. That's it." And so, at 11:42 a.m., the gallery posted a brief statement to all their platforms. The Blackwell Gallery is aware of a video circulating involving our recent winter exhibition preview and is conducting a comprehensive review of the events. We have a zero-tolerance policy for discriminatory behavior and are committed to creating an inclusive environment for all art lovers. It wasn't enough. Comments flooded in by the minute. Zero tolerance? Then why did your staff tolerate it right in front of everyone? This isn't just about bad employees. This is about institutional bias. Where's the apology? By noon, 2 former interns of the gallery had posted anonymously on Reddit, claiming they had witnessed similar treatment of minority guests at previous events. One of them wrote, "Staff are subtly encouraged to maintain the gallery's atmosphere. Translation, cater to wealthy white patrons. Ignore everyone else." The story wasn't just Vanessa's anymore. It was everyone's. Arts reporters called the gallery's press office continuously. Producers at major networks reached out to Richard through his website contact form. One offered to feature him on their evening culture segment. He declined. He wasn't looking for attention. He just wanted people to understand that what he'd witnessed wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, subtle, but unmistakably a microaggression caught on video, magnified for the world to see. At 2:23 p.m., a woman who had been standing near Vanessa posted a reply to the video. "I was there last night. I saw exactly what happened. I offered to let her take my place, and I'm ashamed I didn't do more." Watching this now makes me realize how complicit silence can be. That's when things shifted. The conversation stopped feeling like outrage and started sounding like a reckoning. Because now it wasn't just Vanessa. Now it was someone else saying, yes. That happened, and I let it. But silence can only shield people for so long, until enough voices break through and force the truth into the light. It wasn't until the following afternoon that Vanessa received the official email from the gallery. The subject line read, "Regarding your complaint, Winter Exhibition Preview." She opened it without much thought. The message was short, carefully worded, apologetic in tone but clinical in structure. "We appreciate you bringing this incident to our attention. After reviewing available materials and speaking with involved parties, we have taken appropriate internal action. The staff members in question have been placed on administrative leave pending further investigation. No names, no direct apology, no real admission, but the message was clear enough." She closed the email and turned back to her work. Outside her office window, the Chicago skyline stretched toward a sky heavy with approaching snow. She had another day of meetings ahead, but for the first time in a long while, she felt the weight of being seen on a massive public scale, not because of what she said, but because of what someone else had witnessed. She didn't know Richard's last name until a producer from a morning show called her executive assistant asking for comment. That's how she learned it. Bennett, a retired arts correspondent. He'd gone on the record that morning, spoke plainly. No grand statements, just truth. "I didn't know who she was." He'd said on air, "Didn't matter. I knew what I saw." The clip of his interview accumulated millions of views in just a few hours. The contrast between his straightforward account and the gallery's cautious response was striking. By 3 p.m., the Blackwell Gallery issued a new statement. Following a comprehensive internal review, the Blackwell Gallery has made the decision to terminate the employment of the staff members involved in the incident during our winter exhibition preview. We deeply regret the experience Ms. Reynolds endured and have reached out directly to express our sincere apology. The tone had shifted, less institutional, more personal. This time the consequence was clear. Staff dismissed. News headlines followed quickly. Gallery fires staff after discrimination incident. Silent dignity speaks louder than words. When exclusion goes viral. Vanessa received dozens of calls that day from colleagues, investors, even a few board members who admitted they had seen the video before mentioning it to her. They knew she was the woman in it. "You handled it with such grace," one of them said. Vanessa just nodded. She didn't feel graceful. She felt tired. She hadn't done anything extraordinary. She hadn't protested, shouted, or even responded publicly. She just stood there and remained composed, and somehow the entire country was having a conversation about it. At 5:33 p.m., her assistant forwarded her a media request. A national morning show would like to have her on for an exclusive interview. She didn't respond. Instead, she called her son. "Did you see the video?" she asked. There was a pause. Then his voice. "Yeah, I saw it this morning. Everyone at school did. You okay?" "I'm fine," he said. "Are you?" Vanessa didn't answer right away. She looked out her office window, phone pressed to her ear, watching snowflakes begin to fall against the darkening sky. "I'm used to it," she said. "But that doesn't mean it's right," he replied. "That's what makes it worse, Mom." She smiled softly. He was right. Across the city, opinion pieces flooded online publications. Some praised the gallery for acting decisively. Others criticized them for not addressing the systemic issue. One cultural critic wrote, "It's not about firing staff. It's about examining why people felt entitled to decide who belongs in these spaces in the first place." That line resonated with Vanessa because that's exactly what she'd been thinking. But knowing you're right doesn't always mean you're ready to speak. and Vanessa still hadn't spoken a word to the public. Not yet. 3 days later, Vanessa stood behind a podium at a tech conference in downtown Seattle. It was a quarterly summit for innovation leaders, a place where terms like disruption, scalability, and digital transformation dominated every conversation. She hadn't planned to address the incident. In fact, her keynote was supposed to be about sustainable technology solutions. But the atmosphere in the room had changed. Everyone knew. Everyone had seen the clip. Even those who hadn't shared it still watched it. And now everyone was waiting to hear what she had to say, not about algorithms or green energy, but about that 3-minute moment in the gallery. She adjusted the microphone. "I'm going to deviate from my scheduled presentation," she said. "We'll get to sustainability innovations shortly." A few people shifted in their seats, most remained still. "I've been asked repeatedly to comment on what happened at that gallery. Not because I made any public statement about it, but because people witnessed it. And I suppose now they want to understand my perspective." She paused. "Well, I wasn't surprised. That's the honest truth. I wish I could say I was. But anyone who's had to continuously justify their presence in spaces they've earned the right to occupy knows exactly what I'm referring to." The silence in the auditorium deepened. No one checked their devices. I didn't raise my voice, didn't demand special treatment. I didn't record anything. I didn't create a scene. I asked a question. I received an answer. That's all. She leaned slightly forward. But here's what matters. Someone else observed it. Someone who had no obligation to speak up. And they did. A few heads turned toward Richard, who sat in the third row, invited by the conference organizers at the last minute. Vanessa continued, "You want to know why that video resonated with so many? Because people saw someone being treated as if they were invisible, and they recognized it. Perhaps they'd experienced it themselves. Perhaps they'd remained silent before. Perhaps they saw a reflection of something they'd prefer not to acknowledge." Her voice was calm, measured. She wasn't lecturing. She wasn't trying to make a statement. She was sharing her truth, and that was enough. It was never about an exclusive tour. Let's be clear about that. It was about how quickly people determine who deserves inclusion, who merits attention, who receives the benefit of the doubt. A man near the back adjusted his tie uncomfortably. A woman in the front row nodded slowly. Vanessa glanced down momentarily, then looked up again. "I've navigated spaces like this for years, and I've learned that the greatest challenge isn't earning your place. It's maintaining your composure when people pretend you haven't. We're conditioned to smile, nod, keep moving forward, avoid disruption, don't make others uncomfortable." She took a deliberate breath. But what if comfort is precisely what perpetuates the problem? The room remained attentive, not tense, just present. "Look, I'm not interested in public shaming. I don't seek retribution. I want people to be attentive, not to the video itself, but to the moment it captured. Because that moment occurs every single day in conference rooms, reception areas, waiting areas, educational institutions, cultural spaces, and most of the time, no one is recording." She stepped back from the microphone slightly. "So no, I didn't become viral content. The truth did. And perhaps that's exactly what we need more of." There was no immediate applause, just thoughtful silence. Then one person began to clap. Another joined. Soon the room filled with the sound, not thunderous or performative, but genuine, reflective, sincere. Richard didn't clap. He just watched her throughout, hands folded in front of him. He didn't need to applaud. He already understood. Vanessa gave a small nod of acknowledgement and stepped away from the podium. But while the room processed her words, another narrative had already begun. One not about galleries or outrage, but about two individuals quietly connected by a moment neither of them had sought. 4 weeks later, the internet had moved on. Fresh headlines, new controversies, different clips trending. That's how the cycle worked. People shared, reacted, discussed, then scrolled to something else. But not everyone forgot. Vanessa was back at her office in downtown Chicago, reviewing sustainability initiatives after 3 weeks of travel. Her assistant messaged her. "There's a visitor here to see you, says his name is Richard Bennett." She looked up from her tablet, surprised. "Send him in." Richard entered wearing a camel-colored overcoat, the kind that speaks of careful selection rather than passing trends. He carried no bag, no phone visible, just a quiet presence. "You didn't need to come all this way," Vanessa said, standing to greet him. "I was in town for my grandson's piano recital," he replied with a slight smile. "Thought I should pay you a proper visit. You don't owe me anything." He took the seat across from her desk. "No, perhaps not, but I wanted to see your workspace, meet the woman behind the composure." Vanessa sat back, releasing a soft breath. "Well," she said, "this is it. Endless emails, coffee that never stays hot, and meetings that could have been emails." Richard smiled. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Nothing awkward, just mutual understanding. "Do you regret sharing the video?" she asked eventually. He shook his head. "Not for a second." She nodded. "What about you?" he asked. "Do you regret maintaining your composure?" Vanessa didn't answer immediately. "I think restraint communicates in its own way," she said. "People assume if you don't visibly react, you're not affected. But sometimes silence carries more weight than confrontation, especially when people are truly paying attention." Richard looked down at his hands. "My wife would have admired you," he said quietly. "She used to say dignity is the final thing they can't take from you unless you surrender it willingly." Vanessa smiled at that. "My mother taught me the same principle." They spoke a while longer, nothing heavy. He asked about her son's science competition, and she asked about his years covering the arts. They shared stories, laughed about the unpredictability of public opinion, and at how neither of them had anticipated any of this. As he prepared to leave, Richard paused by the door. "I didn't record that video because I expected it to create change," he said. "I recorded it because I refused to pretend I hadn't witnessed it. That made all the difference." Vanessa nodded. "Sometimes bearing witness is the most powerful act of all." He gave her a gentle smile and departed. That evening, she remained in her office after everyone else had left. Outside, snow fell steadily over the city, transforming the urban landscape into something softer, quieter. She stared at the blank screen of her tablet, then opened a new document. At the top, she typed, "Each day presents us with a choice. Look away or bear witness, speak out or remain silent. And sometimes the most resonant truth is the one no one intended to capture on camera." She paused, then added, "Inclusion is not a privilege. It's a fundamental starting point." She saved the file, closed the application, and leaned back in her chair. She hadn't planned for any of this, but perhaps that was the point. Sometimes it's the narratives we never choose that transform us most profoundly, not because of how dramatically they unfold, but because of how honestly they're witnessed. As the snow continued to fall outside her window, Vanessa realized something that Richard had understood all along. In a world that often tries to make certain people invisible, simply seeing them, truly seeing them, can be the most revolutionary act of all.